Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. It looks like there's some developments in this potential strike against Iran. And this whole time that I've been doing this channel, I've been wondering, how is Armageddon and the broader war of Gog and Magog and the final siege of Jerusalem, how's it all going to take place? Are we already seeing it? I put together this spreadsheet called Timeline Israel Final War. And the idea behind this is to show that ever since Israel became a state, it's essentially just been in a long, ongoing war or a series of wars and conflicts and intifadas and terrorist attacks and things like that. And so, is this entire Israeli, Arab, Israeli Palestinian conflict Gog and Magog? And are we getting close to Armageddon and the siege of Jerusalem? I don't know if this is Gog and Magog ever since Israel became a nation. I don't think that ancient prophets would have described it as a series of existential wars. They probably just would have seen the whole thing as a war and all these different things as battles. So, for example, the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, the war that's going on right now, which it still isn't officially over. The last that I checked, with the ceasefire with Hamas, they've moved into phase 2, and they're supposed to reach phase 3, which essentially is the end of that war, but things could always reignite. These numbers are not updated, by the way, for the Hamas war. I didn't do that for this video, but just to show you that this could be how prophecy is playing out. I'm also trying to track escalations. I have this spreadsheet called Timeline Israel War Escalations. And since it's not officially over, I'm going to keep adding to this spreadsheet. So I might be adding to it pretty quickly here, because if we go to X, this is Faytuck's news. Israel assesses that the U.S. will attack Iran in that we are entering a key week. Okay, now there had been reports earlier, and I did a video where they were talking about how things are very imminent. Well, it doesn't seem like it was as imminent as people thought, but every day that goes by, more and more U.S. forces are entering the region. And I think this is probably right. This is according to Channel 13 in Israel. Entering a key week. In a meeting with CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper, IDF officials demanded that any strike include hits on Iran's surface-to-surface missile systems and government institutions. So Israel does not want to have a round 2 of the 12-day war in which Iran sent hundreds of ballistic missiles. I don't know if they were cruise missiles, but they were definitely ballistic missiles that were launched at Israel. The damage done to Israel was very marginal. I don't know how much more successful they would be this time, but what do I know? I have some more information to share, though. But in my opinion, I feel like the Iranian regime is coming to an end. I think that this is where it's headed. And so the question for me is, what does that mean? And what's going to be the aftermath? Is it going to lead to further chaos? Is it going to lead to Armageddon? The invasion of Israel? The siege of Jerusalem? Well, I have some thoughts on that. I actually had a conversation with Grok about it, and it had some interesting insights that I want to share toward the end of the video. But I've always said, even the experts, with as much as they know and as much experience and research that they have under their belt, nobody really knows. It's very hard to predict the future. There's so many different variables and factors. So I just feel like this would be a really, really big change if the government of Iran collapses and changes into something else. I feel like that's pretty unpredictable. Okay, there were multiple posts on X talking about this, that Khamenei is now in an underground bunker. in preparation for the strikes against Iran that seem imminent and are going to happen for sure. This is open source intel. Senior Iranian official to Al Jazeera. This time, any attack, whether limited or unlimited, or by whatever name it is called, will be considered by us a full-scale war and an existential threat against Iran, and we will respond in the harshest manner. The armed forces are prepared for the worst-case scenarios, though we hope that the concentration of military forces does not signal a real confrontation. The collapse of Iran's government would directly lead to the collapse of the entire region, a scenario Israel seeks. Our situation today is far better than during the 12-day war. Well, I guess we'll see. Iran and other countries like Iran, North Korea, there's always a lot of saber rattling and bluster. Who knows if this is actually true? Our situation today is far better than during the 12-day war, and the element of surprise no longer exists. The resumption of nuclear negotiations is among the issues being discussed. Iran will not negotiate over its missile program. And then we have this from Mario Nafal. Iran's defense minister, we're getting stronger. Trust us, bro. Iran says its missile capabilities got better after the 12-day war, and that US and Israeli hesitation proves Iran's superiority. Also says it won't reveal new capabilities to, quote unquote, preserve surprise. So, okay, if they got some kind of new weapon systems from Russia, China, or just something that they haven't used before, then okay, I guess we'll see how that goes. And then another post from Mario Nafal. Why the US is hesitating on Iran. Part of the delay is Washington's allies quietly sweating. Gulf states and Israel are reportedly telling the US to slow down because they're not fully confident that their air defenses could handle a serious Iranian counterstrike. Well, again, I'm not an expert, but what happened during the 12-day war did not seem that impressive to me. They launched hundreds of ballistic missiles, and they hit some targets, but the worst that I saw personally was like an apartment building, and it made like a hole. It didn't even take down the whole building. But I don't know, maybe during the 12-day war, maybe it wasn't a serious strike, quote unquote. I have the question, have they been able to replenish their supply? Because back when we were covering that, there were these percentages that they were talking about, how they'd used up X percent of their inventory. So have they been able to replenish that since that time? All right, continuing. They fear if Iran fires back hard, missiles fly, and suddenly everyone's Iron Dome, Patriot, and don't worry, we've got this systems are cooking. So while the public talk is about strategy and timing, behind the scenes, it's also, are we actually ready for what comes next? Okay, I guess we'll see. This is from Phaetex News. The discussions between senior IDF officials and CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper tonight are about, quote unquote, defensive coordination between Israeli and U.S. armies. So, yeah, maybe that is a concern. So, one thing that I've been wondering, and I've already expressed this a number of times, is could this be a scenario where, just like when you're playing the board game Risk with your friends, and then everybody's ganging up against you, and then you just flip the board, could something like that happen here, where the regime sees that its days are numbered, the writing is on the wall, and so it's like, okay, if we're going to go out, we're going to go out big. That's like one of the things that I'm worried about, the unpredictability of that. If they feel like it's all but inevitable, then maybe they'll do an all-out thing, you know? And I also wonder about its allies, Russia, China, and others, in this big geopolitical game of chess that's being played. The United States seems to be doing pretty well. We've seen the Arab Spring, which I feel like was supported by the West. We recently saw, which caused a lot of changes in the Middle East. We saw what recently happened to Maduro in Venezuela, and it seems like the United States has that situation under control. And so if you're the other side and you see your pawns and your bishops and your rooks being taken down, then you might get desperate and maybe up the stakes, right? So what's Iran going to do as it sees that its days are numbered? And what are its allies going to do? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, just one more post, and then we're going to look at what Grok said about the potential for Armageddon and the siege of Jerusalem. This is a UK report. With the US buildup in the Middle East and Israel's Mossad activities inside Tehran, the collapse of the Iranian regime is now guaranteed. Well, I guess we'll see, but I think that assessment is right. Israel initially denied a military operation against Iran, but has now declared its readiness. As Iranian religious leader moves toward an unknown underground bunker, the Middle East is preparing for a near total war. Okay. Oh, and just one more thing. As we're thinking about the chess analogy, if we take one of their bishops, then isn't it possible that they might conclude, okay, well, we need to take one of yours. We need to take Israel. If you're going to take Iran, then we're going to take care of Israel. I wonder if anybody's thinking along those lines. Okay, so I used Grok and I was asking about its assessment of what could potentially happen if this could at all turn into Armageddon, meaning an attack from the north and an invasion into Israel from the north, and then eventually the siege of Jerusalem. I'm just going to read the highlighted parts. So, could this spiral out of control? Yes. There is a plausible risk of escalation beyond controlled strikes based on expert analyses. Factors include Iran's response capabilities. Iran could retaliate with ballistic missiles, drones, or cyber attacks targeting U.S. bases, Israeli cities, or Gulf allies. Reports warn that a U.S. strike could draw in Gulf states like Saudi Arabia or the UAE caught in crossfire. Unlike a limited operation, this could involve sustained exchanges, disrupting global oil supplies and economies. So I guess that's one of those factors, one of those variables that could escalate things if suddenly it's affecting your economy and you don't want this to happen. Like if you're one of these other countries and you just want a final solution, what do you do about it? Okay, maybe we should defend Iran. Maybe, who knows? Okay, proxy networks. Iran-based groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq, Syria, might activate, turning bilateral action into a multi-front war. Hezbollah alone has tens of thousands of rockets, potentially overwhelming Israeli defenses. Yeah, and I have felt, as I have speculated about things, that Hezbollah may be a key player in Armageddon. We saw what Hamas did back in October of 2023. It was limited, but it was pretty dramatic and it led to everything that's going on right now. Well, Hezbollah is larger, and if Iran decides to do like an all-out war against Israel and just throw everything at it, why not include your proxies, Hezbollah? What if just everything comes together to overwhelm Israel's defenses? What if Hezbollah fires all these rockets? What if Hezbollah and these militias in Iraq and Syria, what if they decide to go ahead and do some kind of ground operation? And I have more on that in just a minute because it could get even worse than that. Domestic instability. Iran's ongoing protests could weaken its regime, but also harden its resolve, leading to unpredictable lashing out. Analysts emphasize that unlike the 12-day war, a 2026 conflict might not be short and sharp, quote unquote, due to lessons learned and increased stakes. However, de-escalation is possible if Trump opts for diplomacy or limited sanctions instead. Could this become the Battle of Armageddon with an invasion from the north and siege of Jerusalem? Factually, there's no evidence that current events are fulfilling this prophecy. It's a matter of religious interpretation, not geopolitical certainty. That said, some parallels could be drawn hypothetically. Attack from the north. Groups like Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, north of Israel, or Syrian militias could launch ground incursions if Iran escalates. Turkey, which borders Syria and has tensions with Israel, has expressed concerns about Israeli actions. Russia, with bases in Syria, might indirectly support such moves, fitting some quote-unquote northern invasion narratives. Let me pause right there. I have a hard time seeing Turkey taking any sort of action against Israel, but who knows? What if it does? Again, what if it's the type of scenario where we take Iran and then they want to take one of our bishops or one of our rooks or knights? Siege of Jerusalem. In a worst case multi-front war, coordinated attacks from Gaza, Hamas remnants, West Bank, Lebanon, and possibly Jordan/Syria could isolate Jerusalem. However, Israel's Iron Dome, David Sling, and US-backed defenses make a full siege unlikely without massive coalition involvement. Many view these links as speculative or alarmist, influenced by dispensationalist theology popular in some US evangelical circles. Yeah. I'll admit, it does seem like a stretch, but anything's possible. Nobody saw the Hamas war coming. That just came out of nowhere. I remember reading what the experts said and how they said, no, Hamas is more concerned about maintaining its control in Gaza. It has no interest in a war. Well, that was very sound reasoning. It was based on research and observation, but it turned out to be wrong. There's just always these wild card events. So who knows? Later on, indications for more damage in a new round. Improvements. Post-war, Iran may have rebuilt missile stocks, enhanced proxies, or acquired tech from Russia/China. Reports suggest better drone swarms or hypersonic missiles. But limitations. Weaknesses in command and control economy, sanctions/protests, and air superiority persist. Israel estimates it can weather barrages, but a prolonged war could strain both sides. So I guess that's a big concern. Is this going to become a prolonged war where maybe both of them run out of their missiles, either for missile defense or for attack? And I guess the question at that point becomes who runs out of their missiles first. Iran might aim for asymmetric hits, oil tankers, cyber, etc., causing indirect damage like economic shocks. Could this spiral into a larger regional war with multiple countries attacking/invading Israel? Absolutely possible, though not inevitable. Scenarios. 1. Core expansion. Starts with US/Israel strikes on Iran, prompting Iranian missiles and proxy activations. Hezbollah could invade northern Israel. Houthis target shipping. Iraqi militias hit US forces. Now, really quick, ever since the war started with Hamas, Hezbollah has been involved somewhat. It's actually, to my surprise, it's actually been pretty limited. And even to this day, Israel continues to strike Hezbollah. So I don't know how easy it would be for them to carry out any sort of ground operation, but what do I know? We'll just have to wait and see what actually happens. All right, the next bullet point, broader coalition. Syria, Iran aligned might join, leading to Golan Heights clashes. Turkey could intervene if refugees spike or Kurds are involved, potentially attacking from the north. Jordan or Egypt might stay neutral but face pressure if Palestinians mobilize. I feel like that bullet point is highly unlikely. Number 3, invasion risks. A full invasion of Israel would require coordinated ground forces from multiple fronts, unlikely without Iran orchestrating it, but feasible if escalation draws in Russia backed actors. Gulf states could be hit, pulling them defensively. Yeah, I feel like the most likely scenario is while the regime is still in power, that they would have to coordinate something to make this happen. Otherwise, I guess it would fall on Russia, China, if they feel like it's worth it as part of their broader strategy. And then the fourth bullet point, mitigating factors. U.S. deterrence, Arab-Israeli normalization, and war weariness post-2025 could limit scope. Analysts warn of a wider and intensified conflict, but note Trump's non-committal stance. And then I asked Grok about the ratio of Palestinians to Israelis within Israel, including Gaza, the West Bank, Golan Heights, just the entire territory that's under Israeli control. Because if it doesn't come from outside, I think there is another option. It could be within the country itself. Think about it. Think about the country you live in, and think about this if you were in this situation. The 2026 figures are estimated at roughly 7.6 to 7.7 million Palestinians and 7.4 to 7.5 million Israelis, defined here as the Jewish population, as is common in such ratios to distinguish ethnic/national groups. This yields a ratio of Palestinians to Israelis of about 1.03 to 1, or roughly even, with Palestinians holding a slight edge due to higher fertility and growth rates. Okay, so if things get really crazy, really out of control, if everybody gets really serious about this, then it's like a one-to-one thing. Half of the people inside your country are potentially against you. If something encourages them to change things. So you have those within the country, you have Hezbollah, you have the militias, you have Iran for as long as Iran is able to survive, the Houthis, and then there's also these wild cards like what if Turkey does lose its mind and it decides to help topple things? Like there's just all sorts of things. Later on, regarding your hypothetical scenario of a general uprising or intifada, where hostile forces are intermixed with the Israeli population, this is a recurring concern in geopolitical analyses, drawing from historical precedents like the first intifada from 1987 to 1993, focus on protests and stone throwing. The second intifada from the year 2000 to 2005, which involved bombings, shootings, and over 4,000 deaths combined. In such a case, the demographic integration would indeed amplify risks and complicate responses. So, I don't know. I think it's really unpredictable, but I feel like Trump is really serious with moving forward with his agenda. And I feel like essentially what he's doing is he's trying to fix all these problems from a U.S. strategic standpoint that have been difficult to fix. And Iran has been a problem for a long time, right? Ever since the revolution in the 70s. And I feel like he's trying to solidify American control and dominance throughout the world, because I really feel like he wants to create a legacy for himself. He wants to be the most amazing American president that there's ever been, and look what he's accomplished. And we've seen him do a lot of interesting things. We saw the creation of the Space Force, for example. That was in his first term. Like I said, more recently, we saw him take Maduro and basically is now in control of Venezuela. What other things has he done? He's done a lot of things. The border wall, along the US border with Mexico. Uh, yeah, he's taken a lot of action. We see everything going on with immigration, for example. So I feel when you look at the trend line, I feel like it's all but certain that this is going to happen, that the Iranian regime is coming to an end. And so the big question is what happens as a result of that? Do things become more peaceful, or does it lead to Armageddon? I don't know. But let's keep an eye on this key week that's been referred to here by Channel 13. And for all we know, we might be just a stone's throw away from Armageddon, and therefore the second coming and Christ coming to the Jews in Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives. All right, well, that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.